Good afternoon, friends. Time for another episode of Kahuna Reads. We are getting close to the end of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Today we start with chapter 23. I'm finishing with 24. They have discovered some of Dracula's hiding places, some of the places he is using to base his operations, and are now on the offensive to go after the vampire, preferably before Mina Harker is fully changed. So we begin with chapter 23, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Dr. Seward's diary. 3 October. The time seemed terribly long whilst we were waiting for the coming of Goldeming and Quincy Morris. The professor tried to keep our minds active by using them all the time. I could see his beneficent purpose by the side glances which he threw from time to time at Harker. The poor fellow is overwhelmed in a misery that is appalling to see. Last night he was frank, happy-looking man, strong, youthful face, full of energy, and with dark brown hair. Today he is a drawn, haggard old man whose white hair matches well with the hollow, burning eyes and grief-written lines of his face. His energy is still intact. In fact, he's like a living flame. This may yet be his salvation, for, if all go well, it will tide him over the despairing period. He will then, in a kind of way, wake again to the realities of life. Poor fellow. I thought my own trouble was bad enough, but his... The professor knows this well enough and is doing his best to keep his mind active. What he has been saying was, under the circumstances, of absorbing interest. So well as I can remember, here it is. I have studied over and over again since they came into my hands all the papers relating to this monster. And the more I have studied, the greater seems the necessity to utterly stamp him out. All through, there are signs of his advance, not only of his power, but of his knowledge of it. As I learned from the researches of my friend Arminius of Budapest, he was in life a most wonderful man, soldier, statesman, alchemist, which latter was the highest development of the science knowledge at the time. He had a mighty brain, a learning beyond compare, and a heart that knew no fear and no remorse. He dared even to attend the scholarmans, and there was no branch of knowledge of his time that he did not essay. Well, in him, the brain power survives the physical death. So it would seem that memory was not all complete. In some faculties of mind he has been, and is, only a child. But he is growing. And some things that were childish at the first are now of man's stature. He is experimenting and doing it well. And if it had not been that we have crossed his path, he may be yet, if we fail, the father or furtherer of a new order of beings, whose the road must lead through death, not life. Harker groaned and said, "And this is all arrayed against my darling. But how is he experimenting? The knowledge may help us to defeat him." "He has all along, since his coming, been trying his power, slowly but surely. That big child brain of his is working. Well, for us it is, as yet, a child brain, for had he dared, as the first, to attempt certain things, he would long ago have been beyond our power. However, he means to succeed, and the man who has centuries before him can afford to wait and go slow. Festina lente may well be his motto." "I fail to understand," said Harker wearily. "Oh, do be more plain to me. Perhaps grief and trouble are dulling my brain." The professor laid his hand tenderly on his shoulder as he spoke. Ah, my child, I will be plain. Do you not see how, of late, this monster has been creeping into knowledge experimentally? He has been making use of the esophagus patient to effect his entry into friend Jean's home for your vampire. So in all afterwards he can come when and how he will. Must at the first make entry only when asked thereto by an inmate. But these are not his most important experiments. Do we not see how at first all these so great boxes were moved by others? He knew not then, but that must be so. But all the time that so great childbrain of his was growing, and he began to consider whether he might not himself move the box. So he begins to help. And then, when he found that this be all right, he tried to move them all alone. And so he progresses, and he scatters these graves of him, and none but he know where they are hidden. He may have intent to bury them deep in the ground, so that only he use them in the night, or at such time as he can change his form, but they do him equal well, and none may know these are his hiding place. My child, do not despair. The knowledge come to him just too late. Already all of his layers but one be sterilized as for him, and before sunset this shall be so. Then he have no place where he can move and hide. I delayed this morning so that we might be sure. Is there not more at stake for us than him? Then why not be even more careful than him? My clock, it is 1 hour, and already, if all be well, friend Arthur and Quincy are on their way to us. Today is our day, and we must go sure, if slow, and lose no chance. See, there are 5 of us when those absent ones return. While he was speaking, we were startled by the knock at the hall door. The double postman's knock at the telegraph boy. We all moved out of the hall with one impulse, and Van Helsing, holding up his hand to keep us silence, stepped up to the door and opened it. The boy handed in a dispatch. The professor closed the door again, and after looking at the direction, opened it and read it aloud. Look out for D. He has just now, 12:45, come from Carfax hurriedly, and hastened towards the south. He seems to be going the round and may want to see you. Mina. There was a pause broken by Jonathan Harker's voice. Now, God be thanked, we shall soon meet. Van Helsing turned to him quickly and said, God will act in his own way and time. Do not fear, and do not rejoice as yet. For what we wish for at the moment may be our undoings. I care for nothing now, he answered hardly, except to wipe out this brute from the face of creation. I would sell my soul to do it. Oh, hush, hush, my child, said Van Helsing. God does not purchase souls in this wise, and the devil, though he may purchase, does not keep faith. But God is merciful and just, and knows your pain and your devotion to that dear Madam Mina. Think you how her pain would be doubled did she but hear your wild words? Do not fear any of us. We are all devoted to this cause, and today shall see the end. The time is coming for action. Today this vampire is limited to the powers of man, and till sunset he may not change. It will take him time to arrive here. See, it is 20 minutes past 1, and there are yet some times before he can hither come. He never so quick. What we must hope for is that my Lord Arthur and Quincy arrive first. About half an hour after we'd received Mrs. Harker's telegram, there came a quiet, resolute knock at the hall door. Just an ordinary knock, such as is given hourly by thousands of gentlemen. It made the professor's heart and mind beat loudly. We looked at each other, and together moved out into the hall. We each held ready to use our various armaments. Spiritual in the left hand, the mortal in the right. Van Helsing pulled back the latch, and holding the door open, stood back, having both hands ready for action. The gladness of our hearts must have shone upon our faces when on the step, close to the door, we saw Lord Godalming and Quincy Morris. They came in quickly and closed the door behind them, the former saying, as they moved along the hall, "It's all right. We found both places, 6 books in each, and we destroyed them all." "Destroyed?" "For him." He was silent a minute, but then Quincy said, "There's nothing to do but to wait here. If, however, he doesn't turn up by 5 o'clock, we must start off. Won't do to leave Mrs. Harker alone after sunset." "He will be here before long now," said Van Helsing, who had been consulting his pocketbook. "Nota bene." In Madam's telegram, he went south from Carfax. That means he went across the river, and he could only do so at the slack of tide, which should be something before 1 o'clock. That he went south has a meaning for us. He is as yet only suspicious, and he went from Carfax first to the place where he would suspect interference least. You must have been in Bermondsey only a short time before him. That he is not here already shows he went to Mile End next. This took him some time, for he would then have to be carried over the river in some way. Believe me, my friends, we shall not have long to wait now. We should have ready some plan of attack, so that we may throw away no chance. "Hush! There is no time now. Have all your arms, be ready." Van Helsing held up a warning hand as he spoke. All we could hear, or we could all hear, a key softly inserted in the lock of the hall door. I could not but admire, even at such a moment, the way in which a dominant spirit asserted itself. In all our hunting parties and adventures in different parts of the world, Quincy Morris had always been the one to arrange the plan of action, and Arthur and I had been accustomed to obey him implicitly. Now the old habit seemed to be renewed instinctively. With a swift glance round the room, he at once laid out our plan of attack, and without speaking a word, with a gesture placed us each in position. Van Helsing, Harker, and I were just behind the door, so that when it was opened, the professor could guard it, whilst we two stepped between the incomer and the door. Godalming behind and Quincy in front stood just out of sight, ready to move in front of the window. We waited in a suspense that made the seconds pass with nightmare slowness. Slow, careful steps came along the hall. The Count was evidently prepared for some surprise. At least, he feared it. Suddenly, with a single bound, he leapt into the room, winning away past us before any of us could raise a hand to stay him. There was something so panther-like in his movement, something so unhuman, that it seemed to sober us all from the shock of his coming. The first to act was Harker, who with a quick movement threw himself before the door leading into the room in the front of the house. As the Count saw us, a horrible sort of a snarl passed over his face, showing the eye-teeth long and pointed. But the evil smile as quickly passed into a cold stare of lion-like disdain. His expression changed again, as with a single impulse we all advanced upon him. It was a pity that we had not some better organized plan of attack, for even at the moment I wondered what we were to do. I did not myself know whether our lethal weapon would avail us anything. Harker evidently meant to try the matter, for he had his great kukri knife, and made a fierce and sudden cut at him. The blow was a powerful one. Only the diabolical quickness of the Count's leap back saved him. A second less and the trenchant blade had shone through his heart. As it was, the point just cut the cloth of his coat, making a wide gap, whence a bundle of banknotes and a stream of gold fell out. The expression of the Count's face was so hellish that for a moment I feared for Harker. I saw him throw the terrible knife aloft again for another stroke. Instinctively I moved forward with a protective impulse, holding the crucifix and wafer in my left hand. I felt a mighty power fly along my arm. It was without surprise that I saw the monster cower back before a similar movement made spontaneously by each one of us. It would be impossible to describe the expression of hate and baffled malignity of anger and hellish rage which came over the Count's face. His waxen hue became greenish-yellow by the contrast of his burning eyes, and the red scar on his forehead showed on the pallid skin like a palpitating wound. The next instant was a sinuous dive. He swept under Harker's arm. Ere his blow could fall, and grasping a handful of the money from the floor, he dashed across the room, threw himself at the window. Amid the crash and glitter of the falling glass, he tumbled onto the flag area below. Through the sound of the shivering glass, I could hear the ting of the gold. Some of the sovereigns fell on the flagging. We ran over and saw him spring unhurt from the ground. He, rushing up the steps, crossed the flagged yard and pushed open the stable door. There he turned and spoke to us. "You think to baffle me, you, with your pale faces all in a row, like sheep in a butcher's. You shall be sorry yet, each one of you. You think you have left me without a place to rest, but I have more. My revenge is just begun. It's spread over centuries, and time is on my side. Your girls that you all love are mine already. And through them you and others shall yet be mine, my creatures, to do my bidding, and to be my jackals when I want to feed. Bah!" With a contemptuous sneer, he passed quickly through the door. We heard the rusty bolt creak as he fastened it behind him. The door beyond opened and shut. First of us to speak was the professor, as, realizing the difficulty of following him through the stable, we moved towards the hall. "We have learned something, much. Notwithstanding his brave words, he fears us. If your time, if your want. For if not, why he hurries so? His very tone betray him, or my ears deceive. Why take that money? You, follow quick. You are hunters of wild beasts, and understand it so. For me, I make sure that nothing here may be of use to him, so, if so that he return." As he spoke, he put the money remaining into his pocket, took the title deeds in the bundle as Harker had left them, and swept the remaining things into the open fireplace, where he set fire to them with a match. Goldeming and Morris had rushed out into the yard, and Harker had lowered himself from the window to follow the Count. He had, however, bolted the stable door. By the time they had forced it open, there was no sign of him. Van Helsing and I tried to make inquiry at the back of the house, but the mews was deserted, and no one had seen him depart. It was now late in the afternoon. Sunset was not far off. We had to recognize that our game was up. With heavy hearts, we agreed with the professor when he said, "Let us go back to Madam Mina. Oh, poor dear Madam Mina. All we can do now, just now, is done. And we can there at least protect her. But we need not despair. There is but one more earth box. We must try to find it. If that is done, all may yet be well." I could see that he spoke as bravely as he could to comfort Harker. The poor fellow was quite broken down. Now and again, he gave a low groan, which he could not suppress. He was thinking of his wife. With sad hearts, we came back to my house, where we found Mrs. Harker waiting us, with an appearance of cheerfulness which did honor to her bravery and unselfishness. When she saw our faces, her own became pale as death. For a second or two, her eyes were closed as if she were in secret prayer, and then she said cheerfully, "I can never thank you all enough. Oh, my poor darling." As she spoke, she took her husband's grey head in her hands and kissed it. "Lay your poor head here and rest it. All will yet be well, dear. God will protect us, if he so will it in his good intent." The poor fellow only groaned. There was no place for words in his sublime misery. We had a sort of perfunctory supper together, and I think it cheered us all up somewhat. It was perhaps the mere animal heat of food to hungry people. For none of us had eaten anything since breakfast. All the sense of companionship may have helped us. Anyhow, we were all less miserable. And saw the morrow is not altogether without hope. True to our promise, we told Mrs. Harker everything which had passed. And although she grew snowy white at times when danger seemed to threaten her husband, and red at others when his devotion to her was manifested, she listened bravely and with calmness. When we came to the part where Harker had rushed at the Count so recklessly, she clung to her husband's arm, held it tight as though her clinging could protect him from any harm that might come. She said nothing, however, till the narration was all done, and matters had been brought right up to the present time. Then, without letting go of her husband's hand, she stood up amongst us and spoke. Oh, that I could give any idea of the scene. That sweet, sweet, good woman, in all her radiant beauty of her youth and animation, with the red scar on her forehead of which she was conscious, and which we saw with grinding of our teeth, remembering whence and how it came. Her loving kindness against our grim hate, her tender faith against all our fears and doubting, and we, knowing that so far as symbols went, she, with all her goodness and purity and faith, was outcast from God. "Jonathan," she said, and the words sounded like music on her lips. It was so full of love and tenderness. "Jonathan, dear, and you, all my true friends, I want you to bear something in mind through all this dreadful time. I know that you must fight, that you must destroy even as you destroyed the false Lucy, so that the true Lucy might live hereafter. But it is not a work of hate. That poor soul who has wrought all this misery is the saddest case of all. Just think what will be his joy when he too is destroyed in his worser part, that his better part may have spiritual immortality. You must be pitiful to him too, though it may not hold your hands from destruction." As she spoke, I could see her husband's face darken and draw together, as though the passion in him was shriveling his being to the core. Instinctively, the clasp on his wife's hand grew closer, till his knuckles looked white. She did not flinch from the pain which I knew she must have suffered. She looked at him with eyes that were more appealing than ever. As she stopped speaking, he leapt to his feet, almost tearing his hand from hers as he spoke. "May God give him into my hand, just long enough to destroy that earthly life of him which we are aiming at. If beyond it I could send his soul forever and ever to burning hell, I would do it." "Oh, hush, hush. In the name of the good God, don't say such things, Jonathan, my husband, or you will crush me with fear and horror. Just think, my dear, I've been thinking all this long day of it. Perhaps, some day, I too may need such pity, and that some other like you, and with equal cause for anger, may deny it to me. My husband, indeed, I would have spared you such a thought had there been another way, but I pray that God may not have treasured your wild words, except as the heartbroken wail of a very loving and sorely stricken man. Oh God, let these poor white hairs go in evidence of what he has suffered, who all his life has done no wrong, and on whom so many sorrows have come." We men were all in tears now. There was no resisting them. We wept openly. She wept too, to see that her sweeter counsels had prevailed. Her husband flung himself on his knees beside her, and, putting his arms round her, hid his face in the folds of her dress. Van Helsing beckoned to us, and we stole out of the room, leaving the two loving hearts alone with their God. Before they retired, the professor fixed up the room against any coming of the vampire, and assured Mrs. Harker that she might rest in peace. She tried to school herself to the belief, and, manifestly for her husband's sake, tried to be content. It was a brave struggle, and was, I think, and believe, not without its reward. Van Helsing had placed at hand a bell which either of them was to sound in case of any emergency. When they had retired, Quincy, Goldeming, and I arranged that we should sit up, dividing the night between us, and watch over the safety of the poor stricken lady. The first watch falls to Quincy, and so the rest of us shall be off to bed as soon as we can. Goldeming has already turned in, for his is the second watch, now that My work is done. I too shall go to bed. Jonathan Harker's journal. 3-4 October, close to midnight. I thought yesterday would never end. There was over me a yearning for sleep and some sort of blind relief that to wake would be to find things changed, and that any change now must be for the better. Before we parted, we discussed what our next step was to be, but could arrive at no result. All we knew was that one earth box remained, and that the Count alone knew where it was. If he chooses to lie hidden, he may baffle us for years. And in the meantime, the thought is too horrible. I did not think of it even now. This I know. If ever there was a woman who was all perfection, one is my poor wronged darling. I love her 1,000 times more for her sweet pity of last night. A pity in my own hate for the monster seems despicable. Surely God will not permit the world to be the poorer by the loss of such a creature. This is hope to me. We are all drifting reefwards now, and faith is our only anchor. Thank God. Mina is sleeping, and sleeping without dreams. I fear what her dreams might be like, such terrible memories to ground them in. She has not been so calm within my seeing since the sunset. Then for a while, there came over her face a repose which was like spring after the blasts of March. I thought at the time that it was the softness of the red sunset on her face, but somehow now, I think it has a deeper meaning. I'm not sleepy myself, though I am weary. Weary to death. However, I must try to sleep, for there is tomorrow to think of. And there is no rest for me until. I must have fallen asleep. I was awakened by Mina, who was sitting up in the bed with a startled look on her face. I could see easily, for we did not leave the room in darkness. She had placed a warning hand on my mouth. Now she whispered in my ear, "Shh, there is someone in the corridor." I got up softly, crossing the room, gently opened the door. Just outside, stretched on a mattress, lay Mr. Morris, wide awake. He raised a warning hand for silence, and he whispered to me, "Hush, go back to bed. It's all right. One of us will be here all night. We don't mean to take any chances." His look and gesture forbade discussion, so I came back and told Mina. She sighed, and positively a shadow of a smile stole over her poor, pale face, as she put her arms round me, and said softly, "Oh, thank God for good, brave men." With a sigh, she sank back again to sleep. I'll write this now, as I am not sleepy. I must try again. 4 October, morning. Once again during the night I was wakened by Mina. This time, we had all had a good sleep, for the grey of the coming dawn was making the windows into sharp oblongs, and the gas flame was like a speck rather than a disk of light. She said to me hurriedly, "Go, call the professor. I want to see him at once." "Why?" I asked. "I have an idea. I suppose it must have come in the night and matured without my knowing it. He must hypnotize me before the dawn, and then I shall be able to speak. Go, quick, dearest. The time is getting close." I went to the door. Dr. Seward was resting on the mattress, and seeing me, he sprang to his feet. "Is anything wrong?" he asked in alarm. "No," I replied. "But Mina wants to see Dr. Van Helsing at once." "I will go," he said, and he hurried into Professor's room. In 2 or 3 minutes later, Van Helsing was in the room in his dressing gown, and Mr. Morris and Lord Godalming were there with Dr. Seward at the door, asking questions. When the professor saw Mina, a smile, a positive smile, ousted the anxiety of his face. He rubbed his hands as he said, "Oh, my dear Madam Mina, this is indeed a change. See, friend Jonathan, we have got our dear Madam Mina, as of old, back to us today." Then turning to her, he said cheerfully, "And what am I to do for you? For at this hour, you do not want me for nothings." "I want you to hypnotize me," she said. Do it before the dawn, for I feel that when I can speak, and speak freely, be quick, for the time is short." Without a word, he motioned her to sit up in bed. Looking fixedly at her, he commenced to make passes in front of her, from over the top of her head downward, with each hand in turn. Mina gazed at him fixedly for a few minutes, during which my own heart beat like a trip hammer, for I felt that some crisis was at hand. Gradually her eyes closed, and she said, "Stock still." Only by the gentle heaving of her bosom could one know that she was alive. The professor made a few more passes, and stopped, and I could see that his forehead was covered with great beads of perspiration. Mina opened her eyes, but she did not seem the same woman. There was a faraway look in her eyes, and her voice had a sad dreaminess which was new to me. Raising his hand to impose silence, the professor motioned to me to bring the others in. They came on tiptoe, closing the door behind them, and stood at the foot of the bed looking on. Mina appeared not to see them. The stillness was broken by Van Helsing's voice speaking in a low, level tone which would not break the current of her thoughts. "Where are you?" The answer came in a neutral way. "I do not know. Sleep has no place it can call its own." For several minutes there was silence. Mina sat rigid. The professor stood staring at her fixedly. The rest of us hardly dared to breathe. The room was growing lighter. Without taking his eyes from Mina's face, Dr. Van Helsing motioned me to pull up the blind. I did so, and the day seemed just upon us. A red streak shot up, and a rosy light seemed to diffuse itself through the room. On the instant, the professor spoke again. "Where are you now?" The answer came dreamily, but with intention. It were as though she was interpreting something. I have heard her use the same tone when reading her shorthand notes. "I do not know. It is all strange to me." "What do you see?" "I see nothing. It is all dark." "What do you hear?" I could detect the strain in the professor's patient voice. "The lapping of water. It is gurgling by, and little waves leap. I can hear them on the outside." "Then you are on a ship?" We all looked at each other, trying to glean something from the other. We were afraid to think. The answer came quick. "Oh, yes." "What else do you hear?" "The sound of men stamping overhead as they run about. There is the creaking of a chain, and the loud tinkle as the check of the capstan falls into the ratchet." "What are you doing?" "I am still. Oh, so still, it is like death." The voice faded away into a deep breath as of one sleeping, and the eyes closed again. By this time the sun had risen, and we were all in the full light of day. Dr. Van Helsing placed his hands on Mina's shoulders and laid her head down softly on the pillow. She lay like a sleeping child for a few moments, and then, with a long sigh, awoke and stared in wonder to see us all around her. "Have I been talking in my sleep?" was all she said. She seemed, however, to know the situation without telling, though she was eager to know what she had told. The professor repeated the conversation, and she said, "Then there is not a moment to lose. It may not be too late." Mr. Morris and Lord Godalming started for the door, but the professor's calm voice calmed them back. "Stay, my friends. That ship, wherever it was weighing anchor whilst we spoke. There are many ships weighing anchor at the moment in your so great port of London. Which of them is it that you seek? God be thanked that we have once again a clue. So whither it may lead us, we not know. We have been blind somewhat, blind of the manner of men, since when we can look back, we see what we might have seen looking forward, if we had been able to see what we might have seen. Alas, that sentence is a puddle, is it not? We can know now what was in the Count's mind when he sees that money. So through Jonathan's so fierce knife put him in the danger that even he dread. He meant escape. Hear me, escape. He saw that with one box of earth box left, and the pack of men following like dogs after a fox, this London was no place for him. He had take his last earth box on board the ship, and he leaves the land. He think to escape, but no, we follow him. Tally-ho! As friend Arthur would say when he put it on his red frock. Our old fox is wily, oh, so wily. And we must follow with wile. I too am wily. And I think his mind in a little while. In meantime we may rest, and in peace. For there are waters between us which he do not want to touch the land, don't want to pass, and which he could not if he would, unless the ship were to touch the land, and then only at full or slack tide. See, as the sun is just rose, and all day to sunset is to us. Let us take bath, and rest, and have breakfast, which we all need, and which we can eat comfortable, since he be not in the same land with us. Mina looked at him appealingly, and she asked, "But why need we seek him further when he has gone away from us?" He took her hand and patted it as he replied, "Ask me nothing as yet. When we have breakfast, then I answer all questions." He would say no more. We separated to dress. After breakfast, Mina repeated her question. He looked at her gravely for a minute and then said sorrowfully, "Because, my dear, dear Madam Mina, now, more than ever must we find him, even if we have to follow him to the jaws of hell." She grew paler, and she asked faintly, "Why?" "Because," he answered solemnly, "he can live for centuries, and you are but mortal woman. Time is now to be dreaded, since once he put that mark upon your throat." I was just in time to catch her. She fell forward in a faint. Chapter 24. Dr. Seward's phonograph diary, spoken by Van Helsing. This is to Jonathan Harker. You are to stay with your dear Madam Mina. We shall go to make our search, if I can call it so. For it is not search, but knowing, and we seek confirmation only. But do you stay and take care of her today. This is your best and most holiest office. This day nothing can find him here. Let me tell you that so you will know what we foreknow already, for I have told them. He, our enemy, have gone away. He have gone back to his castle in Transylvania. I know it so well, as if a great hand of fire wrote it on the wall. He have prepared for this in some way. The last earth box was ready to ship somewhere. For this he took the money. For this he hurry at the last, lest we catch him before the sun go down. It was his last hope, save that he might hide in the tomb, that he think poor Miss Lucy, being as though, as he thought like him, keep open to him. But there was not of time. When that fail, he makes straight for his last resource, his last earthwork, I might say, did I wish, double entente. He is clever, oh, so clever. He knows that his game here was finished. So he decide to go back home. We find ship, he find his ship going by the route he came, and he go in it. We go off now to find what ship and whither bound. When we discover that, we come back and tell you all. Then we will comfort you, and poor dear Madam Mina, with new hope. For it will be hope when you think it over, that all is not lost. This very creature we pursue, he take hundreds of years to get so far as London, and yet, in one day, when we know of the disposal of him, we drive him out. He is finite, so he is powerful to do much harm and suffers not as we do. But we are strong, each in our purpose. And we are all more strong together. Take heart afresh, dear husband of Madam Mina. This battle is but begun. In the end we shall win, so sure as that God sits on high to watch over his children. Therefore, be of much comfort, till we return. Van Helsing. Jonathan Harker's journal. 4 October. When I read to Mina Van Helsing's message in the phonograph, the poor girl brightened up considerably. Already the certainty that the Count is out of the country has given her comfort, and comfort is strength to her. For my own part, now that this horrible danger is not face to face with us, it seems almost impossible to believe in it. Even my own terrible experiences in Castle Dracula seem like a long-forgotten dream. Here in the crisp autumn air, in the bright sunlight, alas, how can I disbelieve? In the midst of my thought, my eye fell on the red scar on my poor darling's white forehead. Whilst that lasts, there can be no disbelief. And afterwards, the very memory of it will keep faith crystal clear. Mina and I fear to be idle, so we have been all over the diaries again and again. Somehow, although the reality seems greater each time, the pain and the fear seem less. There is something of a guiding purpose manifest throughout, which is comforting. Mina says that perhaps we are the instruments of ultimate good. It may be. I shall try to think as she does. We've never spoken to each other yet of the future. It is better to wait till we see the Professor and the others after their investigations. The day is running by more quickly than I ever thought a day could run for me again. It's now 3 o'clock. Mina Harker's journal. 5 October, 5 p.m. Our meeting for report. Present, Professor Van Helsing, Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, Mr. Quincy Morris, Jonathan Harker, Mina Harker. Dr. Van Helsing described what steps were taken during the day to discover on what boat and whither bound Count Dracula made his escape. As I knew that he wanted to get back to Transylvania, I felt sure that he must go by the Danube mouth, or by somewhere in the Black Sea, since by that way he come. It was a dreary blank that was before us. Omne ignotum pro magnifico. Everything unknown seems wonderful. And so, with heavy hearts, we start to find what ships leave for the Black Sea last night. He was in sailing ship, since Madame Mida tells of sails being set. These not so important as to go in your list of the shipping in the times, and so we go, by suggestion of my Lord Godalming, to your Lloyd's. There are not of all ships that sail, however so small. There we find that only one Black Sea-bound ship go out with the tide. She is the Tsarina Catherine, and she sailed from Doolittle's Wharf for Varna, and thence on to other parts and up the Danube. So, said I, this is the ship whereon is the Count. So off we go to the Doolittle's Wharf, and there we find a man in an office of wood so small that the man looked bigger than the office. From him we inquire the goings of the Tsarina Catherine. He swear much, and he red face and louder voice, but a good fellow all the same. And when Quincy give him something from his pocket, which crackle as he roll up, and put it in so small bag which he have hid deep in his clothing, he still better fellow and humble servant to us. He come with us, and has many men who are rough and hot. These be better fellows too when they have been no more thirsty. They say much of blood and bloom and of others which I comprehend not. So I guess what they mean. But nevertheless, they tell us all the things which we want to know. They make known to us among them how last afternoon at about 5 o'clock comes a man so hurry, a tall man, thin and pale, with high nose and teeth so white, and eyes that seem to be burning. That he be all in black, except that he have a hat of straw, which suit not him all the time. That he scatter his money in making quick inquiry as to which ship sails for the Black Sea and where. Some took him to the office and then to the ship, where he will not go aboard but halt at the shore end of gangplank, and ask that the captain come to him. The captain come, when told that he will be very well, and so he swear much at the worst he agree to term. Then the thin man go, and someone tell him where horse and cart can be hired. He goes there, and soon he come again, himself driving cart, on which is a great box. This he himself lift down, so it takes several to put it on truck for the ship. He give much talk to captain as to how and where his box is to be placed. But the captain like it not, and swear at him in many tongues, and tell him that if he like, he can come and see where it shall be. He say no, that he come not yet, for that he have much to do. Whereupon the captain tell him that he had better be quick, with blood, for that ship will leave the place of blood before the turn of the tide with blood. Then the thin man smile, and say that of course he must go when he think fit, but he will be surprised if he go quite so soon. The captain swear again, polyglot, and the thin man make him bow, and thank him, and says that he will so far intrude on his kindness as to come aboard before the sailing. Finally, the captain, more red than ever, and in more tongues tell him that he doesn't want no Frenchmen with bloom upon them, and also with blood in his ship, with blood on her also. And so, after asking where there might be close at hand a shop where he might purchase ship forms, he departed. No one knew where he went, or blooming well cared, as they said, for they had something else to think of. Well, with blood again. For it soon became apparent to all that the Tsarina Catherine would not sail as expected. A thin mist began to creep up from the river, and it grew, and grew, till soon a dense fog enveloped the ship, and all around her. The captain swore polyglot, very polyglot, polyglot with bloom and blood, but he could do nothing. The water rose and rose, and he began to fear that he would lose the tide altogether. He was in no friendly mood, when just at full tide the thin man came upon the gangplank again, and asked to see where his box had been stowed. Since the captain replied that he wished that he and his box, old and with much bloom and blood, were in hell. But the thin man did not be offended, and he went down with the mate and saw where it was placed. Came up and stood a while on deck in fog. He must have come off by himself, for none noticed him. Indeed, they thought not of him. For soon the fog began to melt away, and all was clear again. My friends of the thirst and the language that was of bloom and blood laughed, as they told how the captain's squares exceeded even his usual polyglot, and he was more than ever full of picturesque, when on questioning other mariners who were in movement up and down the river that hour, he found that few of them had seen any of the fog at all, except where it lay around the wharf. However, the ship went out on the ebb tide, and was doubtless, by morning, far down the river mouth. She was by then, as they told us, well out to sea. And so, my dear Madam Mina, it is that we have to rest for a time, for our enemy is on the sea, with the fog at his command, on his way to the Danube mouth. To sail a ship takes time, go she never so quick. And when we start, we go on land more quick, and we meet him there. Our best hope is to come on him when in the box between sunrise and sunset, for then he can make no trouble, no struggle. And we may deal with him as we should. There are days for us in which we can make ready our plan. We know all about where he go, for we have seen the owner of the ship, who have shown us invoices and all papers that can be. The box we seek is to be landed in Varna, and to be given to an agent, one Ristix, who will then there present his credentials. And so our merchant friend will have done his part. When he asks if there be anything wrong, for that so, he can telegraph and have inquiry made at Varna. We say, no. For what is to be done is not for police or of the customs. It must be done by us alone and in our own way. When Dr. Van Helsing had done speaking, I asked him if it was certain the Count had remained on board the ship. He replied, "We have the best proof of that, your own evidence, when in the hypnotic trance this morning." I asked him again if it were really necessary that they should pursue the Count, for, oh, I dread Jonathan leaving me, and I know that he would surely go if the others went. He answered in growing passion, at first quietly. As he went on, however, he grew more angry and more forceful, till in the end we could not but see wherein he was at least some of that personal dominance made him so long a master among men. Yes, it is necessary, necessary. For your sake in the first, and then for the sake of humanity. This monster has done much harm already in the narrow scope where he finds himself, and in the short time when as yet he was only as a body groping, his so small measure in darkness and not knowing. All this I have told these others. You, my friend, dear Madam Mina, will learn it in the phonograph of my friend John, or in that of your husband. I have told them how the measures of leaving his own barren land, barren of peoples, and coming to a new land where life of man teems till they are like the multitude of standing corn, was the work of centuries. Were another of the undead like him to try what he has done, perhaps not all the centuries of the world that have been, or that will be, could aid him. With this one, all the forces of nature that are occult and deep and strong must have worked together in some wondrous way. This very place, where he had been alive, undead for all these centuries, is full of strangeness of the geologic and chemical world. There are deep caverns and fissures that reach none know whither. There have been volcanoes, some of whose openings still send out waters of strange properties, and gases that kill or make to vivify. Doubtless there is something magnetic or electric in some of these combinations of occult forces, which work for physical life in strange way. And in himself were from the first some great qualities. In a hard and warlike time he was celebrated that he had more iron nerve, more subtle brain, more braver heart than any man. In him some vital principle have in strange way found their utmost. And as his body keeps strong and grow and thrive, so his brain grow too. All this without that diabolic aid which is surely to him, for he have to yield to the powers that come from and are symbolic of good. And now, this is what he is to us. He have infected you. Oh, forgive me, my dear, that I must say such, but it is good for you that I speak. He infect you in such wise that even if he do no more, you have only to live in your own sweet way, and in so time death, which is of man's common lot, and with God's sanctions, shall make you like him. This must not be. We have sworn together that it must not. Thus, we are ministers of God's own wish, that the world, and men for him his son die, will not be given over to monsters, whose very existence would defame him. He have allowed us to redeem one soul already, and we go out as the old knights of the cross to redeem more. Like them we shall travel towards the sun's rise, and like them, if we fall in good cause. He paused, and I said, "But will not the Count take this rebuff wisely? Since he has been driven from England, will he not avoid it? as a tiger does the village from which he has been hunted. Aha! He said. Your simile of the tiger good for me, and I shall adopt him. Your man-eater. See if in India called the tiger who has once tasted blood of the human. He had no more for other, but prowl unceasingly till he get him. This that we hunt from our village is a tiger too, a man-eater, and he never cease to prowl. Nay, in himself he is not one to retire and stay afar. In his life, his living life, he go over the Turkey frontier and attack his enemy on his own ground, and be beaten back. But did he stay? No. He come again, and again, and again. Look at his persistence and endurance. This the child brains there was to him. He have long since conceived the idea of coming to a great city. What does he do? He finds out the place of all the world most of promise for him. Then he deliberately set himself down to prepare for the task. He find in patience just how his strength and what are his powers. He studied new tongues. He learned new social life, new environment of old ways, the politics, the law, the finance, the science, the habit of a new land, and the new people who have come to be since he was. His glimpse that he have had whet his appetite only, and keen his desire. Nay, it helped him to grow as to his brain. It all proved to him how right he was, the first in his surmises. He have done this alone, all alone, from a ruined tomb in a forgotten land. What more may he not do when the greater world of thought is open to him? He that can smile at death as we know him, who can flourish in the midst of diseases that kill off whole peoples. Oh, if such a one was to come from God and not the devil, what a force for good might he not be in this old world of ours? But we are pledged to set the world free. Our toil must be in silence, and our efforts all in secret. For in this enlightened age, when men believe not even what they see, the doubting of wise men would be his greatest strength. It would be at once his sheath and his armor, and his weapons to destroy us, his enemies, who are willing to peril even our own souls for the safety of one we love, for the good of mankind, and for the honor and glory of God. After a general discussion, it was determined that for tonight nothing be definitely settled, that we should all sleep on the facts and try to think out the proper conclusions. Tomorrow at breakfast we are to meet again, and after making our conclusions known to one another, we shall decide on some definite course of action. I feel a wonderful peace and rest tonight, as if some haunting presence were removed from me. Perhaps my surmise was not finished, could not be, for I caught sight in the mirror of the red mark upon my forehead, and I knew I was still unclean. Dr. Seward's Diary, 5 October. We all rose early, and I think that sleep did much for each and all of us. When we met at early breakfast, there was more general cheerfulness than any of us had ever expected to experience again. It really is wonderful how much resilience there is in human nature. Let any obstructing cause, no matter what, be removed in any way, even by death, and we fly back to first principles of hope and enjoyment. More than once we sat around the table, my eyes opened in wonder whether the whole of the past days had not been a dream. It was only when I caught sight of the red blotch on Mrs. Harker's forehead I was brought back to reality. Even now, when I am gravely revolving the matter, it is almost impossible to realize that the cause of all our trouble is still existent. Even Mrs. Harker seems to lose sight of her trouble for whole spells. It is only now and again, when something recalls it to her mind, she thinks of a terrible scar. We are to meet here in my study in half an hour and decide on a course of action. I see only one immediate difficulty. I know it by instinct rather than by reason. We shall all have to speak frankly. And yet, I fear that in some mysterious way poor Miss Harker's tongue is tied. I know that she forms conclusions of her own. and from all that has been I can guess how brilliant and how true they must be. She will not, or cannot, give them utterance. I have mentioned this to Van Helsing, and he and I are to talk it over when we are alone. I suppose it is some of that horrid poison which has got into her veins beginning to work. The Count had his own purposes when he gave her what Van Helsing called the vampire's baptism of blood. Well, there may be a poison that distills itself out of good things. In an age when the existence of ptomaines is a mystery, we should not wonder at anything. One thing I know. If my instinct be true regarding poor Mrs. Harker's silence, then there is a terrible difficulty, an unknown danger, in the work before us. The same power that compels her silence may compel her speech. I dare not think further. For so I should in my thoughts dishonor a noble woman. Van Helsing is coming to my study a little before the others. I shall try to open the subject with him. When the professor came in, we talked over the state of things. I could see that he had something on his mind which he wanted to say, but felt some hesitancy about broaching the subject. After beating around the bush a little, he said suddenly, "Friend John, there is something that you and I must talk of alone. Just as the first, at any rate. Later, we may have to take the others into our confidence." Then he stopped. So I waited. He went on. "Madam Mina, our poor, dear Madam Mina is changing." A cold shiver ran through me to find my worst fears thus endorsed. Van Helsing continued. "With the sad experience of Miss Lucy, we must this time be warned before things go too far. Our task is now, in reality, more difficult than ever, and this new trouble makes every hour of the direst importance. I can see the characteristics of the vampire coming in her face. It is now but very, very slight. But it is to be seen if we have eyes to notice, without to prejudge. Her teeth are some sharper, and at times her eyes are more hard. But these are not all. There is to her the silence now often. As so it was with Miss Lucy. She did not speak even when she wrote that which she wished to be known later. Now my fear is this. If it be that she can, by our hypnotic trance, tell what the Count see and hear, is it not more true that he who have hypnotized her first, and who have drink of her very blood and make her drink of his, should, if he will, compel her mind to disclose to him that which she know?" I nodded acquiescence. He went on. "Then, what we must do is to prevent this. We must keep her ignorant of our intent, so she cannot tell what she not know. This is a painful task. Oh, so painful that it heartbreak me to think of. It must be. When today we meet, I must tell her that reason which we will not speak. She must not be of our counsel, but be simply guarded by us." He wiped his forehead, which had been broken out in profuse perspiration at the thought of the pain which he might have to inflict upon the poor soul already tortured. I knew that it would be some sort of comfort to him if I told him that I had also come to the same conclusion, or at any rate, it would take away the pain of doubt. I told him, and the effect was as I expected. It is now close to the time of our general gathering. Van Helsing has gone away to prepare for the meeting, and his painful part of it. I really believe his purpose is to be able to pray alone. Later. At the very onset of our meeting, a great person of relief was experienced by both Van Helsing and myself. Mrs. Harker had sent a message by her husband to say that she would not join us at present, as she thought it better that we should be free to discuss our movements without her presence to embarrass us. The Professor and I looked at each other for an instant, and somehow we both seemed relieved. For my own part, I thought that if Mrs. Harker realized the danger herself, it was much pain as well as much danger averted. Under the circumstances, we agreed, by a questioning look and answer, with finger on lip, to preserve silence of our suspicions, until we should have been able to confer alone again. We went at once into our plan of campaign. Van Helsing roughly put the facts before us. The Tsarina left the Thames yesterday morning. It will take her at the quickest speed she has ever made at least 3 weeks to reach Varna. But we can travel overland to the same place in 3 days. Now, if we allow for 2 days less for the ship's voyage, owing to such weather influences as we know that the Count can bring to bear, and if we allow a whole day and night for any delays which may occur to us, then we have a margin of nearly 2 weeks. Thus, in order to be quite safe, we must leave here on the 17th at the latest. Then, we shall at any rate be in Varna a day before the ship arrives, and able to make such preparations as may be necessary. Of course, we shall all go armed against evil things, spiritual as well as physical. Here, Quincy Morris added, I understand that the Count comes from a wolf country, and it may be that he shall get there before us. I propose we add Winchesters to our armament. I have a kind of belief in a Winchester when there's any trouble of that sort around. You remember, Art, when we had that pack after us at Tobolsk? What wouldn't we have given then for a repeater apiece? Good, said Van Helsing. Winchesters it shall be. Quincy's head is level at all time, but most so when there is to hunt, though my metaphor be more dishonor to science than wolves be of danger to man. In the meantime, we can do nothing here. And as I think that Varna is not familiar to any of us, why not go there more soon? It is as long to wait here as there. Tonight and tomorrow, we can get ready, and then, if all be well, we four can set out on our journey. We four? Said Harker interrogatively, looking from one to another of us. Of course, answered the professor quickly. You must remain to take care of your so sweet wife. Harker was silent for a while, and then said in a hollow voice, Let us talk of that part of it in the morning. I want to consult with Mina. I thought that now was the time for Van Helsing to warn him to not disclose our plans to her, but he took no notice. I looked at him significantly and coughed. For answer, he put his finger on his lip, turned away. Jonathan Harker's journal. 5 October afternoon. Some time after our meeting this morning, I could not think. The new phases of things leave my mind in a state of wonder which allows not room for active thought. Mina's determination not to take any part in the discussion set me thinking. As I could not argue the matter with her, I could only guess. I am as far as ever from a solution now. The way the others received it, too, puzzled me. Last time we talked of the subject, we agreed that there was to be no more concealment of anything amongst us. Mina's sleeping now, calmly and sweetly, like a little child. Her lips are curved and her face beams with happiness. Thank God there are still such moments for her. Later. How strange it all is. I sat watching Mina's happy sleep and came as near to being happy myself as I suppose I could ever be. As the evening drew on, and the earth took its shadows from the sun, sinking lower, the silence of the room grew more and more solemn to me. All at once, Mina opened her eyes and, looking at me tenderly, said, Jonathan, I want you to promise me something on your word of honor. A promise made to me, but made holily, on God's hearing, and not to be broken, though I should go down on my knees and implore you with bitter tears. Quick, you must make it to me at once. Mina, I said, a promise like that I cannot make at once. I may have no right to make it. But, dear one, she said, with such spiritual intensity, her eyes were like pole stars. It is I who wish it, and it is not for myself. You can ask Dr. Van Helsing if I am not right. If he disagrees with you, you may do as you will. Nay, more, if you all agree later, you are absolved from the promise. I promise, I said. For a moment she looked supremely happy. Though to me all happiness for her was denied by the red scar on her forehead. She said, Promise me that you will not tell me anything of the plans formed for the campaign against the Count. Not by word, or inference or implication, not at any time whilst this remains to me." She solemnly pointed to the scar. I saw that she was in earnest, and I said solemnly, "I promise." And as I said it, I felt that from that instant a door had been shut between us. Later, midnight. Mina has been bright and cheerful all the evening, so much so that all the rest seemed to take courage, as if infected somewhat with her gaiety. As a result, I even myself felt as if the pall of gloom which weighs us down was somewhat lifted. We all retired early. Mina is now sleeping like a little child. It's a wonderful thing that her faculty of sleep remains to her in the midst of her terrible trouble. Thank God for it. But then at least she can forget her care. Perhaps her example may affect me as her gaiety did tonight. I shall try it. Oh, for a dreamless sleep. 6 October, morning. Another surprise. Mina woke me early, about the same time as yesterday, and asked me to bring Dr. Van Helsing. I thought that it was another occasion of hypnotism, and without question went for the professor. He had evidently expected some such call, for I found him dressed in his room. His door was ajar, so that he could hear the opening of the door of our room. He came at once. As he passed into the room, he asked Mina if the others might come too. "No," she said quite simply. "It will not be necessary. You can tell them just as well. I must go with you on your journey." Dr. Van Helsing was as startled as I was. After a moment's pause, he asked, "But why?" "You must take me with you. I am safe with you, and you shall be safer too." "But why, dear Madam Mina? You know that your safety is our solemnest duty. We go into danger to which you are, or may be, more liable than any from us. From circumstances, things that have been." He paused, embarrassed. As she replied, she raised a finger, pointed to her forehead. "I know. That is why I must go. I can tell you now, whilst the sun is coming up, I may not be able again. I know that when the Count wills me, I must go. I know that if he tells me to come in secret, I must come by wile, by any device to hoodwink. Even Jonathan." God saw the look she turned on me as she spoke. And if there be indeed a recording angel, that look is noted to her everlasting honour. I could only clasp her hand. I could not speak. My emotion was too great for even the relief of tears. She went on. "You men are brave and strong. You are strong in numbers. For you can defy that which would break down the human endurance of one who had to guard alone. Besides, I may be of service, since you can hypnotize me and so learn that which even I myself do not know." Dr. Van Helsing said very gravely, "Madam Mina, you are, as always, most wise. You shall with us come, and together we shall do that which we go forth to achieve." When he had spoken, Mina's long spell of silence made me look at her. She had fallen back on her pillow asleep. She did not even wake when I had pulled up the blind and let in the sunlight, which flooded the room. Van Helsing motioned to me to come with him quietly. We went to his room, and within a minute Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, and Mr. Morris were with us also. He told them what Mina had said and went on. "In the morning we shall leave for Varna. We now have to deal with a new factor, Madam Mina. Oh, but her soul is true. It is to her an agony to tell us so much as she has done. But it is most right, and we are warned in time. There must be no chance lost, and in Varna we must be ready to act the instant when that ship arrives." "What shall we do exactly?" asked Mr. Morris laconically. The professor paused before replying. "We shall at the first board that ship. Then, when we have identified the box, we shall place a branch of the wild rose on it. This we shall fasten, for when it is there, none can emerge. So at least says the superstition. And to superstition we must trust at the first. It was man's face in the early, and it have its root in face still. Then, when we get the opportunity that we seek, when none are near to see, we shall open the box, and all will be well. Well, I shall not wait for any opportunity, said Morris. When I see the box open, I shall open it, destroy that monster, though there were 1,000 men looking on, and if I'm to be wiped out for it the next moment. I grasped his hand instinctively and found it as firm as a piece of steel. I think he understood my look. I hope he did. Good boy, said Dr. Van Helsing. Brave boy. Quincy is all man. God bless him for it. My child, believe me, none of us shall lag behind or pause from any fear. I do but say what we may do. What we must do. But indeed, we cannot say what we shall do. There are so many things which may happen, and their ways and their ends are so various, that until the moment we may not say. We shall all be armed and in ways, and when the time come for the end has come, our efforts shall not be lack. Now, let us today put all our affairs in order. Let all things which touch on others dear to us, and who on us depend, be complete. For none of us can tell what, or when, or how the end may be. As for me, my own affairs are regulate. And as I have nothing else to do, I shall go make arrangement for the travel. I shall have all tickets and so forth for our journey. There was nothing further to be said, and we parted. I shall now settle up all my affairs of earth, and be ready for whatever may come. Later. It is all done. My will is made and it all complete. Mina, if she survives, my sole heir. If it should not be so, then the others who have been so good to us shall have the remainder. It's now drawing towards sunset. Mina's uneasiness calls my attention to it. I'm sure there is something on her mind, which the time of exact sunset will reveal. These occasions are becoming harrowing times for us all, for each sunrise and sunset opens up some new danger, some new pain, which, however, may, in God's will, be means to a good end. I write all these things in diaries, since my darling must not hear them now. But if it may be that she can see them again, they shall be ready. She is calling to me. And that, my friends, are chapters 23 and 24 of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I hope you guys enjoyed that. The previous episodes are up on YouTube. 3 episodes actually went up tonight. They're actually, let me rephrase that. Were uploaded tonight. They should be ready by tomorrow evening. So if you want to catch up on all the previous episodes, please do. You can find my YouTube channel at yt.kahunatheelder.com. And if you like these, give them a like. Subscribe and you'll know when the next one's coming out. Otherwise, next week we will continue with chapters 25 and 26. There's only 4 chapters left. So we're getting close. So I hope you guys have a great evening. I hope you enjoyed hearing it. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.